Wild freak, I room North Sea, biting, never bites. Fast water swimming in the girls down in the guys. Spin nine seat, black, you right, red fire. OMG, Mac 4, Robin C, Gallon Neck Night. Hot stove talk, Robin C, bringing the high. EC's alive, plus trust under those in my city life. White. Queens got the dreams united. On the rag, Trump out, bring me stack. Night and under that chocolate flag. Smack that home out the park. Rock a deafening black. Side game time, Robin CP time to ignite. Under NYC skies, we fight the good fight. Remains cheer in the orange, we unite. Match forever. I'm 50 in sight. Match bright and high. Energy like a live wire. Queen City chance. Passion never tires. Grand slam dreams and paces focus fast. Holding it steady, cause we know we gonna last. We the kings of the field, time to ignite. Under NYC skies, we fight the good fight. Remain cheer in the orange, we unite. Match forever, I'm 50 in sight. All hearts ignite like NYC stars. Robin CP, guiding even through scars. Queens got the glow, city anthem flows.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to Mets Hot Stove, episode 28 of the Hot Stove Show, right here on the channel. Unfortunately, me and Chris were supposed to do a show together, but because of the inauguration with Trump and everything like that, and the DC, Maryland traffic is just crazy, he unfortunately could not make it for the 6 p.m. show tonight. But don't worry, guys. I got you covered with all the topics that we're going to talk about on the show today. So no worries. We are going to get it all situated and all figured out, ready to go to talk some Mets baseball and talk about what the Mets are going to do after another free agent that might have been on the Mets list to go and get is off the board, as we'll talk about that in a little bit. All right, guys. So I just wanted to, before we get into anything baseball craziness, me and Chris decided that when it comes to the comments, because, you know, this hot stove has taken off throughout the offseason. There's, you know, constantly so many people in the chat. We've tried to keep track of all the comments throughout the show, and it's not easy to do. I mean, even with me and him in both eyes, we miss a lot of comments. And sometimes we can guarantee you it's not on purpose. It's just that to try to keep track of his chat and my chat with all the people in our streams on the hot stove, it's hard to keep track. And we hate missing comments that, you know, good or bad or indifferent of what our opinions are. If they're different, it doesn't matter. We like to get as to many comments and questions as possible. So we decided to try to make it easier. It's not for everybody, obviously, but I mean, it could be for everybody, but to make it easier for anybody who wants to ask a question, it's not easy to check everything. Like, to constantly check the comments and look up and talk and all that, it's not as easy as you think. Like, right now, there's 100 people in the chat right now watching the stream, and it probably, I mean, it's constantly over 300 on my channel, and, you know, Chris got 100, 150, 200. It's not easy to keep track of everybody typing. So just wanted to let everybody know that if you do the super chats, we're not asking for, you know, $30, $40, $50 or anything like that. 99 cents, whatever it is, to do a super chat to ask a question. And at the end of the show, the rapid fire time, we're going to make the rapid fire about you guys. All the super chats and the questions or the comments or the opinions you give in the super chat, we can talk about at the end of the show. And that's what I wanted to do. That's what we want to do going forward. It just makes it easier to track it, because when you write a comment and it's not a super chat, it doesn't get highlighted. And we have to go through hundreds of comments just to find it. And that's on both chats. So you can imagine 300, 400, 500, 600 people type in, and we can't find everything. So just to make it easier, because there's been people commenting that, you know, we missed their comments, and, you know, they were trying to get a question through and they couldn't. So unfortunately, it's hard to do. So what we're going to do, and we were going to start it today, and we're going to start it today, and I'm going to start it today, even though I'm doing a solo show, is just to do a super chat and put your question there, and we'll go through the topics. I'll pinpoint. I'll try to look at comments and try to catch some comments and questions and everything like that. But again, they go so fast. You guys are in the chat enough to know that it's hard to find some comments, and I hate missing comments. I hate missing questions or opinions because, listen, the show's not here if it ain't for you guys when me and Chris are, blabbing our mouths for an hour and a half. So we just want to make sure we can get to as many people as possible. And when it comes to the rapid fire time at the end of the show, the last topic, we're going to make it about you guys, right? Me and Chris are going to ask each other a question, and then we're going to go super chat by super chat on both of our channels and answer the questions or talk about the comment that you did, and we'll be ready to go. So I just wanted to make that clear for everybody. That's why at the bottom of your screen, you see super chats answered first. It's only because if I miss comments that are not a super chat, they're not highlighted, and it's hard to find them and scroll. I'm going to be scrolling through comments, and you're going to be looking at a screen of my face without me talking. So I just wanted to make sure everybody understands that, and we'll be ready to go. All right, guys. So let's get started with the Pete Alonso news that happened a couple of days ago. I did a video the other day in regards to Pete Alonso and the New York Mets. About a week ago, it seemed like all hope was gone. The Mets and Alonso couldn't come to a deal, with the Mets offering a 3-year between $68 and $70 million. They kind of said they would go a little higher. And Pete Alonso declined that offer. And it just seemed like they both parted ways, and the Mets were going to pivot and do something else. And Pete Alonso was going to go find, greener lands in somewhere else. And then this report came out from Robert Murray, who is an MLB insider, stating that the Mets and Pete Alonso are still engaged. They're still, the Mets are still courting Pete Alonso. The Mets are still talking to Pete Alonso. And it was like, whoa, how is that even possible? Right? I know it's possible, but it seemed like they just parted ways. Like they were both going to go separate ways. The Mets were going to plan B, and Pete Alonso was going to go elsewhere. That's the way it seemed. Why wasn't this reported once this decline of an offer happened? I don't know. It's been hush hush, but it's clear that the Mets are still at least engaged with Pete Alonso. And I still believe that Pete Alonso and Scott Boras' final call, if Pete Alonso actually gets an offer from somebody else, because he still hasn't got an offer from anybody, and we'll see what happens with Toronto, which seems like that's the team that might be going after him. Obviously, they just signed Santander. We'll talk about that later on in the show. But when it comes to Pete Alonso, there is no other offers out there. So again, the Mets continue to give an offer that is at fair value, that is, what is it, around 23, was it 60? Yeah, it was about $23 million or so, which is right along with the market value, which is between Matt Olson and Freddie Freeman, where he should be. The Mets shouldn't give a 4, 5, 6-year deal when nobody's bidding against them for Pete Alonso. Until that happens, we'll see if the Mets will or will not do that. But again, why bid against yourself when you don't have to? And until somebody actually gives an offer to Pete Alonso, then we'll see how the Mets react. And then we can have a real conversation about, do the Mets want Pete Alonso or not? Because there's a lot of conversations that some people say that it's not fair. It's not a fair deal to Pete Alonso, that they're lowballing him. It's an insult. Some saying it's too high. Some say they shouldn't even give him an offer. Back and forth. The fact of the matter is, the Mets are given a contract of fair market value. Forget about the years. The years are irrelevant when it comes to fair market value. It's about the AAV. The AAV is between Olson and Freeman, which is, I don't think he should be paid more than Olson, but market value is market value. He gets a little bit more, a couple more $1 million because he was a Met, and that's what you do. So the fact of the matter is, the Mets and Pete Alonso are still engaged, right? We'll see if Toronto steps up and makes an offer for Pete Alonso after they just signed Anthony Santander. We'll see if they do that. We know that they're interested in him, but that comes with maybe some a little bit of Vladimir Guerrero being pissed off at that scenario, because you're signing somebody that plays the same position as him, even though Vladimir Guerrero can play third. But again, I don't know how willing Vladimir Guerrero is willing to go to third base in a contract year. How would the Mets, Pete Alonso would have felt that the Mets said last year, Pete, you're only going to be DH, you're not going to play first base. Say if they had somebody at first base, right? Pete Alonso wouldn't go along with that. It would hurt his value. So this goes back to the same thing when it comes to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Everybody's like, oh, he'll play third. Why does he have to move? And that's where Michael, yeah, sure, he might want to play third. But again, in a contract year, he might have said that last year or the year before. But in a contract year, that might not be as beneficial as you might think. It might say, well, you give him options for other teams because he can play third and first. But what if he has a bad season and he's been at third base? Now teams that might have wanted a third baseman were like, I don't know if you can play third base good enough and your offensive numbers are down, maybe because you're thinking too much when you're on the field at third base, right? Little things like that can turn teams away. And there ain't that many teams going to be going after Vlad Guerrero that can't afford $400+ million for Vlad Guerrero. So there's a lot to look at when it comes to Pete Alonso and the Blue Jays. And again, we've seen the offer from Santander, right? It was 5 years, $92 million, with the potential of it being 6 years, $110. That is somewhat of an overpay for Anthony Santander. A lot of people were thinking it was going to be around 4 years, around 75, 80 million. And he got less than the qualifying offer, but he got the security of the years. I think that would have been I think the Mets could have done that. I don't think that was, it wasn't an overpay with money. It was an overpay in years, right? So we can look at it both ways when it comes to that. But when it comes to the Mets and Pete Alonso, we all know that the Mets are going to get the final call from Pete Alonso and Scott Boras. That was something that Scott Boras said at the winter meetings. That's not going to change. Scott Boras, even though he's a jerk, he's an asshole, and he's a snake, he's not stupid. He knows he can make a call to Steve Cohen and say, all right, the Blue Jays offered me 3 years, $80 million. Can you match it? Or can you do better? Because I don't believe Pete Alonso, if the Mets match it, you think he's going to go to Toronto for the same amount of money? I find that very hard to believe. Very hard to believe. Now, if he does, well, what are you going to do? But when it comes to Pete Alonso and the Mets, there's still a very strong possibility that he can go back to the New York Mets. And until a team offers him something, again, I think Toronto's going to start probably moving in the Pete Alonso direction a little bit more since they got Santander signed. We'll see. Again, still no offer to Pete Alonso just of yet. I don't know if they're going to go above and beyond at this point to overpay for Pete Alonso just to get him, knowing that they finally didn't land Anthony Santander. So I don't know if they will. They have the money, we know that. But are they willing to do that, especially with Vlad Guerrero? If they're going to keep Vlad Guerrero, at least for this year, and at least up until the deadline, why are you going to risk him being upset that you got a first baseman? Like, that's a strong possibility. Yeah, Stan, I agree with you when it comes to that. Yeah, he had 44 home runs and 100 RBIs for $18 million. Yeah, the money's perfectly fine, right? The years was the overpay of years, not really the money. But again, I don't, he had a great year in a contract year, right? Unfortunately, unlike Pete Alonso, I don't think he's going to hit 44 home runs and 100 RBIs. Right? I think he's probably going to be more of that 30 home run hitter with 90 RBIs, which again, a lot of teams can use, including the Mets. But I do find it very interesting that when it comes to the Pete Alonso situation, I still believe the New York Mets will sign Pete Alonso. I just feel like he's just going to come back to the New York Mets. And and I've said this before, I still believe the New York Mets are willing to give more money to Pete Alonso. I think they would be willing to go 4 years, even with an opt-out. I think they're willing to do it. But they don't need to do it at this point. On January 20th, they still don't have to change their offer. Why don't they have to change their offer? Because there's no other offer out there. I'd be shocked if the Mets don't counter from an offer that Pete Alonso gets from, say, Toronto. I truly believe that. Because if you really look at it, if you give him an extra year and they offer him $25 million, the Mets will offer him $23 million per year for 3 years. It's basically $2 million more per year, and you can still do that. You could clearly do that, and I still believe they would do that. But again, they don't have to up until this point, right? Again, it's going to be very telling when Toronto offers Pete Alonso a contract, and Scott Boras calls the Mets and say, "Listen, Toronto gave us 4 for 25, 4 for 100." We'll know if the Mets really want Alonso or they don't want him that much. That's when it's going to be really telling. And that's where we are right now. But the good news is that the Mets have options that they still can go after to improve their team. And obviously the next topic is what Chris talked about many times already, and that's Jurickson Profar. And, I didn't realize that Jurickson Profar had a really damn good season offensively. I know he's not great defensively, right? He can play first base. He can play the outfield. He's like, I would say, an average defender, probably in all positions. Nothing special. But he batted .280, 24 home runs, 89 RBIs. I mean, that is something that can be very helpful in a Mets lineup. And again, yeah, you're looking at the 24 home runs. I know too many people are going to look at the home runs and be like, well, he only hit 24 home runs. Yeah, but he had actually more RBIs than Pete Alonso. You see how when people focus on the home runs and feel like that's the end-all, be-all, they lose focus on the better things that player does offensively to actually provide production for a team, right? Batting .280 gets you on base more, right? That's just a fact. Average helps you get on base more. It means you put the bat on the ball. 24 home runs is very, very serviceable. That is pretty good. And he got 89 RBIs from those 24 from other ways just in home runs. Because again, Pete Alonso hit 34 home runs and had 84, 85 RBIs. So he had a few RBIs less, but 10 more home runs. But he batted 60 points less than Profar. And again, I'm not saying Profar is better than Pete Alonso. I'd be silly to say that. But production comes in other ways than just home runs. I get annoyed when people talk about the home runs like it's the end-all, be-all, when it's clearly not. You can score runs by other ways, doubles, singles, triples, home runs, right? But you can also get on base. And putting the bat on the ball allows the defense to make mistakes as well. Too many times, the 212 averages is basically you're not putting the ball in play enough. And not only does it cost you, you do nothing with that at bat. That's an issue. And then that's a big problem what I had with Brandon Nimmo and Pete Alonso, because they were sacrificing just hitting the home runs and doing what they do when they were at their best. What did they do? They hit for a very respectable average along with the home runs, especially Pete Alonso. But Pete Alonso got away from that. He starts swinging for the fences more. He doesn't take the ball to right center like he was. When Pete Alonso was at his best, he was hitting the ball to right center field and wasn't afraid to take the outside pitch to right center field. Now he's pulling off of that. Now he's grounding the ball to third. Now he's grounding the ball to shortstop. Now he's missing that pitch. Same thing with Brandon Nimmo. Average went down, strikeouts went up. Brandon Nimmo can still hit 20 home runs and bat .270. and get that walk rate up, especially when you're not part of that big run producer, right? You tried it, it worked, but it also affected what you did best to help the team overall. The Mets were successful when Brandon Nimmo was getting on base and causing havoc, taking a 9-pitch at bat. It made the team better. And that's the focus, and that's the idea around what you're supposed to do with the guys that are supposed to be the run producers, right? You can't have everybody in the lineup run producers, because that means there's going to be more strikeouts. There's going to be probably lower averages because more guys are going to try to hit home runs. And in the Mets case, when you got a Mark Vientos, who's a 30 home run guy, when it's Juan Soto, that's a 30 home run guy, two guys that are already in the middle of your order that are are run producers, you need guys in front of them that get on base. And I'm not just talking about walks. I'm talking about getting that average up, right? Francisco Lindor is kind of an anomaly. He can hit 30 home runs at the leadoff spot, but unfortunately, we had to put him there because the team was struggling. He was struggling, and it worked out that he was so good in the leadoff spot. It changed his whole mindset and approach, and it made him a better ball player and was basically played like an MVP. So in that aspect, yeah, would it be better to have Lindor in that 2 or 3 spot? Absolutely. But because he was so damn good, you're not moving from that leadoff spot. But you can get that 30 home runs. Clearly, he can hit 30 home runs in the leadoff spot, right? I think the average where he was, what was it, 265, if I'm not mistaken? I take that in a heartbeat, especially with his 30 home runs. He's a guy that actually became a good leadoff hitter, and once he changed his mindset and became that leadoff hitter for the Mets, everything started to work out and trickle down throughout the lineup, and it started to work out. So let's say the Mets bring back Pete Alonso. Now you got the 3 guys that you've been looking for to do the job. You got Soto, you got Vientos, you got Alonso. And again, Juan Soto, not only is he a run producer, but he's going to bat 280 plus. He's going to get on base when he needs to. Yeah, you want him to be a run producer as well, but I have no problem if you have guys like Vientos and Alonso, especially Vientos, that can do damage and get on base here too, along with Lindor in that. And that's not even talking about the 5-6 hitters that you're putting in there with Nimmo and Alvarez as well. Like that is a problem for a lot of pitchers. You got a top 4 or 5 that can cause a lot of damage and just cause havoc. And that's what you need. Wilfredo, yeah, I'm trying to look at the comments, guys. And again, I see the super chats there. And again, at the end of the last topic on rapid fire time, that's when I'll answer all the super chat questions, so we can go through basically the list of questions or comments, and then we can discuss it as a group. So when it comes to Jurickson Profar, again, batting 280, 24 home runs, and 89 RBIs, very respectable, very good actually. And you could do a lot worse than. And if you do get Profar, by the way, I think Marte is going to be on his way out. The Mets going to find a way to get rid of Marte, which, again, that works out perfectly. Profar can play many positions. He can be the righty DH along with Winker, and they can platoon at the DH spot. And he could, when you want to give guys days off, Profar can play those positions, which is beneficial as well. Again, a super utility guy can play all 3 outfield positions, can play a little first base if need be. That is pretty good. If you get a guy that can bat 280, again, he puts the bat on the ball. He gets on base. He might be 6th or 7th in the lineup, probably even higher than that. He might be 6th, depending on where you want him to be. But, you could still get those guys on base, and it might help the bottom of the order as well. River, I agree with you. I do agree that his defense is not very good. But I think you would probably profile him as a DH, in my opinion. I think that's what the Mets are looking for. Again, he'll play all around the field just to give guys days off. Like if it's 7 games in 7 days, you got to give guys some days off. Profar will get that start, and other guys, Winker will get a start, stuff like that. So you can do that on occasion, but I could see Profar being a platoon guy at DH with Winker. And, you could get Profar in probably 4 or 5 days a week anyway by just giving guys days off as well. So I think that's a big key. And, of course, if you're playing a lefty, you put Profar in. You got a righty on the mound, you break Winker in. And then, you find that bat. And, again, if you hit, they will find a way to put you in the lineup regardless, right? That's what happened with Tyrone Taylor and Harrison Bader, right? Tyrone Taylor was getting the clutch hits. He was hitting better than Bader. And Tyrone Taylor took over the position, right? That's always a possibility that could happen as well. So when it comes to Profar, it's not a bad option. It's not a bad option at all. Now, I don't think you could just get Profar as that bad and say, oh, there goes the lineup, ready to go, 2025. That's not going to cut it for me. I mean, you would have to bring in a Bregman. You would have to bring in Alonso, somebody else that is actually a legitimate bat. And I still believe this, right? I don't know what's going on in Detroit, why they haven't signed Bregman. They've been attached to him forever. And the Blue Jay thing, the Blue Jays with Santander, it seemed like the Blue Jays wanted to break down every tree just before they can, actually move on. And, they were in on Sasaki until the very end. And then they didn't get him either. And then they pivoted to Santander and they worked out. And clearly, Santander probably didn't want to go to Toronto, but when they offered him another year from the 4 years, 82, they were like, all right, we'll give you 5 years, 92, and we'll also give you a club option for the 6th year that can make it $110 million. So they gave him even more, a couple more years, a couple more dollars from what they originally offered him, because he had that 4-year, $82 million on the table, which is, a pretty good deal. And it was out there for 2 weeks and he didn't take it. So clearly his choice wasn't to go to Toronto. But again, when they give you extra years, when they give you extra money, it's hard to say no and think that when your market's kind of shrinking, you're going to go to another team and see if they're going to give you that. And he probably thought that nobody else was. Maybe he was talking to the Mets. I don't know if the Mets were willing to go past 3 or 4 years. And add on those extra years and that extra money. I don't know. Again, we don't know that. Maybe more will come out about if the Mets were in on Anthony Santander or not. Usually it does. So that's where we are when it comes to Jurickson Profar. It's a good addition, but it shouldn't be the only addition. Again, it's clear that the Mets were looking for 2 bats. That has seemed like that's been the plan, to get 2 more bats other than Juan Soto. If you get Profar, it's not enough. I don't even think if you get a Bregman or Pete Alonso and that's it, I don't think that's enough. You got to give me a Bregman Profar or Alonso Profar, and I'd be much happier with the lineup overall. And then you kick ass with the next topic, which is the bullpen, right? Obviously, the Mets signed A.J. Minter, which was a very good deal, 2 years, $22 million to opt out after the first year. He's going to be the setup man to Edwin Diaz. Clearly, the Mets were talking to Tanner Scott, but weren't going to pay another guy in the bullpen $20 million, who wasn't going to be necessarily your closer, to be a setup man for Edwin Diaz. So that wasn't going to happen. They probably were trying to get him for a little bit, a couple more years, maybe a little bit less money. It wasn't going to happen. That's when the Dodgers stepped in and, do what they do. And they got A.J. Mitchell, which is, again, very, very good signing, because the Mets need that. And again, when you got Jose Buto, when you got Daniel Nunez, when you got Reed Garrett, and now you got A.J. Minter, and then with Diaz, that's already 5 guys that you could feel very comfortable going in with so far. And you would assume they need 2 more arms. Obviously, you would need 7 arms in a bullpen. I want Kirby Yates. Don't stop now. You get that other really good arm from the right side. Pair him with Minter. That's your 7. You got Yates, Minter, Diaz 7, 8, and 9, and you can play around with the Daniel Nunez, the Garretts, the Butos. Maybe even if you get a Stanek or a Robinson to add to Yates. Maybe Jose Buto goes into the rotation, and now you have your full 6-man rotation, and now you have a very good bullpen. I like the fact that Buto will going back into the rotation, and depending on what the Mets do with the lineup, it could be a very successful offseason going into 2025. And D said Profar is mid. We were all saying it. Look at his stats. Yeah, what stats? He batted 280, 24, and 89. How many Mets did that last year? Like, let's not act like 280, 24, and 89 is not good. Now, again, his defense is average. I completely agree with you guys. So, let's see. Hold on. Well, and that's the other thing, right? I don't know if Nimmo's going to be healthy or not. Like, that's the thing that I think we're missing here. That I don't think enough people are talking about. I mean, me and Chris brought it up on a couple of hot shows ago that, we don't know if Nimmo is actually healthy right now. Because I think it was like maybe the beginning of January, there was a report that Nimmo didn't even start running yet. And maybe he is now. We would hope so, but we still don't really know that. I think Profar would be fine, but again, you can't just do Profar and that's it, and expect people to be excited about that. Like, yeah, Juan Soto is going to help. You basically replace Pete Alonso with Juan Soto. That's an upgrade, but you also need more. Yeah, just he's not he would be a solid pickup. Let's see. Hold on. Well, it wasn't a fluke because if you look at his stats, they're right where they basically are. And he's a solid hitter. Like, he is that. All right, let's see. Yeah, BG, I understand when Profar struggles, he struggles, but you can say that about any player, right? When Pete Alonso struggles, Pete Alonso struggles. When Brandon Nimmo struggles, he struggles. When Lindor struggles, he really struggles. You can say that about a lot of people. Right? When guys get into slumps, they can go into very bad slumps. We all understand that. That's called baseball. We all know that. But you have to also understand that that's a good bat in the lineup. It is. Well, I mean, when it comes to a fluke, I'm not going to say it's a fluke because he's a solid player, right? I don't see that you like, who would you want? I know you could say Bregman or Alonso, but if it's a caliber of player like Profar, what is out there, right? You can do a lot worse than 20 home runs, 270 average, and 80 RBIs. Let's say if he does that. Even if he does 260, 20 home runs, and 75 RBIs, there wasn't a lot of guys in the Mets lineup that actually did that other than Vientos, Alonso, and Lindor. Nimmo did that too, but their averages were basically putrid. Trey for Araya is why. He's just an average guy. He's no power, no speed. His defense isn't good. So, we're talking about the same thing. Yeah, Profar is a 245 hitter, right? But that doesn't mean a guy can't be a better, like, he batted 280 this year. Let's say he hits in between and hits 265. But if he gives you 20 home runs and 75 to 80 RBIs, that is better than most of the guys in the lineup that you had last year in Mets uniform. There was only like 4 guys that actually did well in the Mets. If you look at the overall stats, that actually did well. And then the 2 guys like Nimmo and Alonso, their average was so bad that it counteracted what they did with the power and RBIs because it didn't feel like they did much. And if it wasn't for Lindor and Vientos and, Jose Iglesias for that matter, who the hell knows? Herb, maybe he isn't. But again, what are we looking for here? Again, we're not looking for Profar to play the outfield every single day. We're looking for. It seems like the Mets would want a guy that is versatile in the outfield, that can play multiple days a week, but can mostly be the DH when there's a lefty on the mound. That's the idea. Yeah. Again, Brian, I understand you said you'd rather play prospects, but where are you playing these prospects? Like Profar is a guy that can play all over the outfield. He could play a little bit of infield as well. A couple of spots in the infield. He can play like 5 or 6 positions. A guy like Mauricio is basically where? At third base? Right now, Vientos is there. What are you going to move Vientos to first base? Just put Mauricio there just for the hopes of that happening? At least you know what Profar is. You know what he is. And the way the Mets have been going about it this offseason, they try to get Teoscar Hernandez. They try to get Jock Peterson. You know what all those guys have in common along with Profar? Can play all 3 outfield positions and can DH. Like that's the idea. Like that's clearly what the Mets are looking for here. They're looking for that Teoscar Hernandez super utility, that Jock Peterson super utility, that Profar super utility that can provide a decent amount of offense. Let's see. Trying to look at the other comments. Josh, I don't know what the Blue Jays are doing, to be quite honest with you. Like, I don't see the Blue Jays going into the season. Say if they do get Alonso, I just don't see how it's going to work out with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Like, everybody just thinks that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to move to third base and says, "Oh, I'm happy." Like, he doesn't have a contract. They've been playing games with him when it comes to extension-wise, where he says he wants the number to start with 4, and they're saying, 340, 360. Like, they're going with these games when they can just jump to 400. They're probably not going to do it. And if they do it, then Pete Alonso's really screwed. Yeah, Chris, Teoscar Hernandez can play all 3 outfield positions. I'm not saying he can be a good center fielder. I'm saying he can play it. He played a few games at center field for the Dodgers last year. He played left field, he played right field, and he DH'd. Again, just because a guy isn't a very good center fielder, right, doesn't mean that he couldn't play there if he needed to. With all the injuries that the Dodgers had, Teoscar Hernandez is playing everywhere in the outfield. I'm not saying he's a very good outfielder. I'm not saying that at all. But you see what the Mets are trying, what they're focusing in on with at least another bat, other than another bat that they're trying to get. If it is Bregman, if it is Alonso, or somebody else that we're not even thinking of. They're trying to look for guys that have multiple positions they can play at, along with providing a good above average offense. And all 3 of those guys, in Hernandez, Peterson, and Profar, fit that profile. And that's what they're looking for. Clearly, they offered 2 contracts to Teoscar Hernandez and Jock Peterson. And it seems like Profar fits that mold. Now, again, I'm not going to be happy if it's only Profar as the other bat. That does not excite me at all. I'd rather just overpay for Pete Alonso or overpay for Alex Bregman because they're better. But if you tell me that you get Profar and you get one of the other 2 guys I just mentioned in Bregman or Pete Alonso, now I'm better with this lineup. I feel good about this lineup going into 2025. River, I agree. I understand that. He's played a lot of DH. But again, there's a potential for him to play left field. There is potential there. Like, it's not the end all be all. Like, right now, Nimmo can't play the outfield. He's not even basically playing at full strength when it comes to his fielding. We have no idea. We don't even know if he could take an at bat. Like, that's the issue. Like, that's the major issue right now. And clearly, the Mets feel the same way. If you're trying to go for guys that can play that left field position, maybe they're not confident in Brandon Nimmo staying healthy on the field. Maybe they are thinking about DH and Brandon Nimmo more often than not, and putting a Profar in left field, because a hobbled Nimmo isn't a good defender. Like, that doesn't help the situation. You're gonna get him more hurt, and it's gonna hurt the Mets defensively. At least Profar, healthy, can be an average left fielder. Could do a lot worse. You could put Jeff McNeil in left field, but again, I don't know. I don't know if they're going to do that. I don't know. But again, they could, but I'd rather have a guy like Profar that can play left field and can provide better numbers. Because if you're going to move McNeil to left field, then you could put Acuna at second base and, see what he does production-wise, but you're hoping for Acuna to play well. If you don't play well and McNeil does what he's done, the last 2 seasons, now you have a real issue when you had guys on the table. Let's see. BWL, why haven't they re-signed Iglesias? Why are they hesitant? Well, they're not hesitant. The lower tier free agents are always one of the last ones to sign. It's just the way it is. Just how it works. So, yeah, when it comes to the bullpen guys, Kirby Yates is a guy I want. I think that should be the next target for the New York Mets. I think you could bring in Yates. Once you bring in Yates, I mean, you have an abundance of guys you can, at the lower end of the market that you can get, as we mentioned. You can get David Robinson. You can get a Ryan Stanek, or even somebody of lesser value, or even somebody that's around that value that you can get to add to that bullpen. And then you would have a top 5 bullpen easily just by the names. Obviously, you got to play the game on the field, but just looking at the way the roster would look, I take that. And that's a good bullpen. So, the Mets are connected to Yates. They're also connected to D-Rob. They're also connected to Stanek. They're, Tim Hill as well, which would be another lefty, and we'll see. But that's where we are at the moment. So, again, we're going to get to Vladimir Guerrero here. Again, there's still a lot of question if the Mets, or let me not say the Mets, if the Blue Jays are going to extend. Again, Vladimir Guerrero gave him a date that when spring training starts, he is not negotiating anymore. So it's less than a month away. If they don't come to an extension, he's going to become a free agent. And I still find it hard to believe that the Blue Jays, I feel like it's going to pick up a little bit. But again, this is the issue with the New York Mets. This is why the Pete Alonso situation dragging out is a problem for the New York Mets. It was this whole time when they weren't doing no moves because they were playing this game with Pete Alonso back and forth. They both were playing this game, and the Mets weren't doing nothing. And obviously, once Alonso declined the last offer, the Mets started to pivot, right? They signed Jesse Winker. They got AJ Minter. And you're like, oh, okay. So it took Pete Alonso and to get away from that for a little while to make moves. They can't continue to do that. They really can't. You can't play games here. And that's why they have to really do make a decision here. And I don't know if Toronto wants to. I don't think they want to trade Vladimir Guerrero Jr., but their hands might be tied at some point. If you can't extend Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Pete Alonso is the guy that they might go after, I know people keep on saying that he wants to play third base. But again, in a contract year, that can be a dangerous game to play. Because if the Blue Jays aren't playing well, yeah, can they trade Vladimir Guerrero at the deadline? Sure. But they're not going to get as much as they would right now. Because now you only got Vladimir Guerrero Jr. for a half a season, and teams are not going to go crazy when it comes to all these prospects for a half a season. I don't think they're going to do that. I'd be shocked. I'd be really, really shocked. But again, I don't think it's likely at the moment because, again, Pete Alonso's still on the table for both teams. So the Blue Jays, who might want to listen to offers for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., can't do that if they actually don't have a first baseman. And the Mets, the same issue. If Pete Alonso is not a New York Met, they have to look and see if they can try to get Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So there's so much to look when it comes to both situations that they're both affecting each of these teams. Because the Blue Jays don't know if they can extend Vladimir Guerrero Jr., or at least hasn't been reported that they think they can. And Pete Alonso hasn't got an offer yet from the Toronto Blue Jays. And the Mets still have their offer out there. I still think the Mets are going to make one trade. You always wait and see. And the Jose Siri trade is a decent trade. It's fine. You see what the Stearns are trying to do with the center field there, especially if you're playing him in left field and you got Juan Soto. It's not the greatest, bunch of outfielders for the corners. Jose Siri can cover a lot of ground gap to gap. So that's the reason why they did it, and that's a good move. But I still feel like David Stearns got a trade under his belt. I don't know if it's going to be for another starting pitcher. I don't know if it's going to be for a big bat like a Vladimir Guerrero Jr. I feel like one of those are coming. I just feel like one of them is going to come. David Stearns, it just seems like a trade pops out of nowhere and it gets done, like the Tyrone Taylor, Adrian Hauser trade. Obviously, the Adrian Hauser part didn't work out, but Tyrone Taylor did. Right, I'd like to trade with Jose Siri. I don't think that's the only trade under his belt. I think there's going to be another one. Again, we can debate to the cows come home what it's going to be. But I feel like there's a trade coming, and we'll see if that's going to be the case going forward. But again, with the Pete Alonso and the Vladimir Guerrero situation with Toronto and the Mets, they both need a first baseman. Well, technically, Toronto doesn't need a first baseman, but obviously the idea, if they try to get Alonso to move Vladimir Guerrero to third, which seems like that could be a possibility. But again, I don't see Pete Alonso going to the Blue Jays unless they absolutely overpay to bring him there. Like they did with Anthony Santander. They gave him 2 more years that they offered prior of the 4 years that they offered earlier. Like, is Alonso going to get 4, 5, 6 years or 4 or 5 years from the Blue Jays? They've been desperate. It's very possible. But that's something that we just have to see. And that Vladimir Guerrero trade to the Mets, I still believe if Toronto gets Pete Alonso, I feel like they would be a little bit more willing to trade Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Because if they can't extend him, I don't know how happy he's going to be, even though he might, quote unquote, want to go to third base. That's still a very risky maneuver, going to a position he played a little bit of. He did a little bit last year, but going into a contract year, not saying that he might lose a little bit of money, but there might be some teams that might shy away from that if Toronto's having a bad year. Vlad's having a bad year. There's a lot of discussion with that, and I do wonder if that's possible. But we'll see. But the trade for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and the Pete Alonso situation goes hand in hand with the Mets and the Blue Jays. And it's funny that the team that the Mets would trade for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is the team that might be looking at Pete Alonso. So it's amazing to me. Yeah, Brian, I understand that the AL sucks, but again, the Blue Jays have underperformed so many years when they were supposed to be, they were picked to win the AL East, they were picked to make the playoffs year after year after year with these core prospect guys, the Bo Bichetts of the world, the Biggios, the Guerreros, signing Springer, guys like that, signing a couple of arms to their rotation. They've continued to underperform year after year. When the American League wasn't good last year, they still didn't make the playoffs. What do they win? 70-something games? Like, that has been a trend. At some point, this is the thing that I was talking about with the Mets for many years with this similar core. Until last year, what were they successful in? They were continuing to be losers. At some point, you have to, shake up the apple cart a little bit and change things because it's not working. Regardless of how much you like a player and you got, there's emotion there with that player, homegrown guy, doesn't matter. At some point, if it continues to not work, you got to change it up, regardless of the emotional aspect of that player or players. And I think it's similar to what the Blue Jays are going through, right? At least the Mets made the playoffs 2 out of the last 3 years. But again, in Toronto's case, when they did make the playoffs, they got embarrassed. They didn't do much at all. So during this trend of core guys that they thought were going to be really important for them and make them contenders, they've been nothing of that sort. I think they made the playoffs one time with the core guys in Vlad, Biggio, Bichette, and other guys that they signed as well to, add to that core. I think they made the playoffs one time, maybe two, and they didn't do well at all. So at some point, you got to change it. And yeah, they might go after it. If they do sign Alonso, move Guerrero to third and see if they can do something about it. But again, right, we don't know how the negotiations are going with Toronto and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. What if it's not, very cordial? And Vlad is not happy with the Blue Jays, with them. I mean, I'm not saying $360 million is lowballing, but when a guy is looking for 4 as a starting point and the team is not going near that, you can get frustrated, regardless of if you want to play third base. You can be frustrated. Like, I'm your homegrown guy. I am the face of your franchise. And he is. And you're giving me this number when I tell you what number I'm looking for. That's when things can start to get a little crazy. And he might be disgruntled and say, listen, trade me. Get me out of here. You don't want to give me the number I'm looking for. Why am I going to play for you, risk an injury, risk not having a good year, and risk losing money in my free agency because you don't want to pay me? Like, that can easily happen. Like, we don't look at that aspect, but it's really possible. Herv, yeah, I understand they spent a lot of money, but they also spent a lot of money and having failed seasons as well. It doesn't matter if they don't want to blow it up this year. It's getting blown up next year. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is gone, especially if they sign Pete Alonso. If they sign Pete Alonso, Vlad Guerrero is more likely gone from Toronto. Like, there's going to be multiple teams that are going to need a first baseman that have a ton of money. And they'd be willing to bid and compete for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And that's the other thing as well. So we'll see. Well, Fred, I've been saying that for a while. So lastly, obviously, we talked about it a little. Santander to the Toronto Blue Jays, 5 years, $92 million, with the potential of it being 6 years, $110 million. And he has an opt-out after the third year, but the Blue Jays can block that by giving him that extra 6th year and that extra $18 million. Similar to what the Garrett Cole contract is with the Yankees, where the Yankees, if they added that extra year, can block him from opting out. And clearly they didn't block him, and he still came back anyway. But it's a similar deal. So Santander to Toronto. Bregman's still out there. Bregman's been connected to the Mets very early on in the offseason. And Bregman's been connected to the Detroit Tigers from basically as far as I can remember this offseason. Clearly, the Detroit Tigers don't have the money well, they do have the money, but I don't know if they're willing to go that far when it comes to the money, because it seems like they've been the only team in on Bregman. Yet, nothing's gotten done yet. And I still believe that the Mets can, jump in here and get a Bregman, especially if the Alonso situation doesn't, him and Alonso and the Mets don't come to a match. I think Bregman could be an option. You can move Vientos to first base, what the Mets have talked about doing, that they'd be willing to do that. You can do that for Alex Bregman. That's another option the Mets can go. I still believe, and I keep on saying this, I think the Mets, if they don't go get Pete Alonso, and the trade scenario with Vladimir Guerrero is not coming to a head, and it's not possible in this offseason, you can get Alex Bregman, move Vientos to first base. That helps your lineup. That makes your defense better, especially on the left side. And the possibilities is that you got that other bat. And yeah, you can still get Profar, and that would help as well. But I think that's still a possibility. And I know there's some people like, well, Bregman's kind of declining, and sure, he's not what he was probably 3-4 years ago. But again, he's still a very good player. He can still hit you 25, close to 30 home runs. I still think again, and again, if you look at StatCast, they show that a couple of his home runs that would have been out at Citi Field in most other ballparks were either caught or hit the wall right of the Crawford box. You know, when after Crawford box, it jerks out and it gets further out there, and it's a deeper part of the ballpark. He hit a lot of those balls off the wall or were caught. So, and a lot of those balls that were caught or hit off the wall would have been definitely out at Citi Field and most ballparks in baseball. So you can add a couple of home runs to that. You know, everybody just thinks that he just pulls the ball and he hits them in the Crawford boxes. He doesn't. Yeah, he pulls the majority of his home runs, but he still hits the ball a long way. And I think he'd be a really good addition if you don't get Pete Alonso. Bring in Alex Bregman, move Vientos to first base, and now you're talking here. And if you want to add Jurickson Profar, put him at DH with Winker, that's a very good lineup, in my opinion. Well, again, we don't know that, though. Again, the Mets with Pete Alonso, we're looking at the Pete Alonso situation, right? You know, the Mets went 2 years for Teoscar Hernandez. He got 3. They went 2 years similar to what Jock Peterson got on the market, but they weren't willing to give the extra money. We don't know that yet. If he's willing to go 6 years on a position player, Pete Alonso is a unique situation because there's nobody bidding against them at the moment. Again, it's going to be telling when it comes to the Pete Alonso situation, and if Stearns is willing to go an extra year and another amount of money for another year, the similar AAV than what he would give him for the first 3 years. Right? We don't know that yet. We really don't know. Until there's an offer on the table from Pete Alonso from Toronto or another team, we'll see how the Mets react. Because I still believe the Mets would be willing to go 4 years, $95 million or $100 million, just give $25 million per year. I think they'd be willing to do that. But there's no motivation to do it when there's not another offer on the table for Pete Alonso. Same thing that goes for any other player. I think the Mets would be willing to give position players 4, 5, 6 year deals if they're going to help the team. Again, the Mets really haven't besides Juan Soto, right? You got that one bat. The other guys, it's not like the guys that they missed out on in Teoscar Hernandez and Jock Peterson got 5-year deals, and the Mets weren't willing to do that. They got an extra year. Like, we have to see what they're going to do with guys like Pete Alonso or Alex Bregman, right? Profar is probably going to be a 1 or 2 year deal. That's from most teams that are going to give that to him. Let's see if a team like the Blue Jays give an offer to Pete Alonso, say 4 for $100. If the Mets don't match that, maybe they just didn't want Pete Alonso or for that number. That's fine. But with Alex Bregman, he's still on the market. If the Mets are willing to go 5, 6 years, we'll see if they do that. And then when they do that, the argument goes out the window for when people are like, well, Stearns is not going to do that. Now, again, if he doesn't do that for either Pete Alonso or Alex Bregman, that's when I'm going to have a real problem. I'm going to really, really, really have a problem with David Stearns. I already have a problem with him with the rotation. I don't think it's very good. I think it could be good, but there's too many hopes and wishes and dreams and question marks with that rotation. We need everything to go right to have them be successful is kind of idiotic to me when you told me last year that this was the year you were going for it. But we'll see. Well, then that's the thing, though. Like, we're complaining about what Stearns is doing when, besides Juan Soto, there wasn't really a position player that was on the market that the Mets were going after and they were competing against another team for a player that was going to get a 4, 5, 6-year deal, right? We thought it was going to be Pete Alonso, but again, where is the offers? Again, let's see what the Toronto Blue Jays do. If they offer Pete Alonso a contract, let's see what the Mets do. If they keep their offer, either they didn't want Alonso anyway, unless they got him for their offer, what they want him to sign for, or they just didn't really want him. Then you have Bregman on the market. Would they try to bid against Detroit if Detroit's doing it at all? Would they say, hey, Bregman, look, we'll give you 6 years, 150 or 160, whatever the hell it is. Let's see if they do it. But until they actually go after a player, especially a position player, that it's looking like the market's going to leave them to a 4, 5, 6-year deal, we'll see if the Mets are in on it. Again, if they don't get Alonso and they don't counteroffer with a similar offer or better offer, now that there's competition for Pete Alonso, and now they're competing back and forth and not just bidding against themselves, we'll see if Stearns is going to start bidding here. Because he really hasn't done it yet. Juan Soto is a unique case. We know Steve Cohen was involved. But we'll see. We really haven't had Stearns go after a position player that other teams want and then start outbidding for a 4, 5, 6-year deal. Again, Teoscar Hernandez got an extra year. Jock Peterson got a similar deal to the Mets, but he got more money from the other team that I guess the Mets didn't want to go. I don't think it's Stearns penny pinching. I just think that could he have given him an extra year? Did he think that if he would have matched the Dodgers offer, he would have came to the Mets? Probably not. He would have probably have to give a 4-year deal for Teoscar Hernandez to come to the Mets to outbid the Dodgers. You're not going to outbid 4 years for Teoscar Hernandez. So that wouldn't make sense. Same thing for Jock Peterson. What are you going to give a 3-year deal to Jock Peterson for another $15 million per? You're not going to do that 3-year deal for Jock Peterson. So that's where we are when it comes to the long-term deals. We still don't know that yet. Pete Alonso, when it comes to the Mets offer, is them going with market value for a first baseman that is in between Olsen and Freeman. That's what they did. There's no need to give him a 4, 5, 6-year deal when there's no offers out there. Nobody at the moment has wanted to give any deal, but let's say a 4-year deal, not out there as of yet. Maybe Toronto will. But right now, a 3-year, $68-70 million is what the market is right now, and that's all they have to bid against is themselves. And that's what they're going to leave it as until further notice. So we will see. Do I think the Bregman is still a possibility for the Mets? Absolutely. Depending on what happens with Pete Alonso. So we'll see. All right, guys. So we're getting to the last topic here. It is the rapid fire time. Because me and Chris are not here. Me and Chris and I. Because Chris is not here, we usually ask each other questions and then answer them. But what we're going to do from here on out is the super chats that I believe it was 5 or 6 people that did, and I have it. It's marked up. It's highlighted on my screen. What we're going to do is that the super chats that you provided, questions, concerns, comments, opinions for my channel or Chris's channel, whatever channel you decide to do the super chat in, at the end of the show with rapid fire, we're going to ask our questions to each other, and then we're going to answer your questions or answer your super chats as we go along to end the show. So that's what I'm going to do right now. So we're going to start with, let's see, there we go. So we're going to start with Duran Rivera, who says, if the Mets sign Profar, do they still sign Pete? I don't know what Stearns is thinking, but I think they have to sign either a Pete Alonso or an Alex Bregman. You can't sign Profar and let Bregman and Pete Alonso go elsewhere and tell me this is the lineup you're going to go with. That does not going to excite me, and I don't think it's going to excite anybody else. So if they do get Profar, I don't think it stops them from getting a Bregman or a Pete Alonso. I would, because they were still talking to Pete Alonso and engaged with Pete Alonso when they offered Teoscar Hernandez and Jock Peterson a deal. Profar is a similar profile to those guys. 1-2 year deal, can play multiple outfield positions, and can also DH as well. So I don't think that stops them from doing what they want to do with another bat. BWL, thank you for the super chat, buddy. I appreciate it. Duran again says, Rob, do you think the Mets are done with the bullpen? Absolutely not. They can't be. They don't have enough guys in the bullpen. Yeah, you could talk about Shaw and Reed Foley. Maybe they're thinking about him, but even still, they probably need at least one more, maybe two in that bullpen, even with the names they currently have on the roster. That's why Kirby Yates is probably, I think, probably their top target at the moment. You add Kirby Yates, now you can do a lot of things with one more bullpen arm. Maybe they'll stick with Sean Reed Foley as one of those arms and not go after anybody else. But I still believe they're going to go after the top target in Kirby Yates and probably try to land D-Rob or a guy like that of similar ilk that can help this bullpen as well. So they're definitely not done with the bullpen. Duran again says Yates and Robinson sounds like good options for 1 year, and even Ryan Stanek, that would be a long-term. And exactly, like all these guys, Yates, Robinson, Stanek. Yates probably might get a 2 or 3 year deal. I think he'd probably get a 2-year deal. If somebody's desperate, maybe they'll give him 3, but I doubt it. Robinson's going to be a 1-year deal. Stanek's going to be a 1-year deal. So those two guys, I think, you can get either one of those guys, but you have to get at least Yates as well. And I think I feel very confident in that as well. And the last topic, the last comment, super chat. If Mets trade for Vlad, who do you think they will trade for him? And I totally agree with you. If the Jays sign Pete, Vlad is gone. I think that's the case. I think the Toronto situation, I don't think they're going to sign Pete until they absolutely know they can't extend Vladimir Guerrero Jr. That's just my opinion. Who did I think they would get to trade for him? I mean, I did a video and I did a trade proposal, but I would give up Jet Williams. I would give up Ryan Clifford. I would give up a Mauricio or an Acuna. Either one of those guys. If I had to choose, I'd rather keep Acuna and put Mauricio in that deal, but you might not have to do that. You might go to, like one of your pitchers other than Sproat. You might want to give a Jonah Tong. You might maybe a Tidwell, maybe a Hamill. And if you want to throw another top 15 to 20 prospect in there, you can throw that in there as well. I think 4 prospects, I think 3 in the top 10 and 1 in the top 15 to 20. If you can do that, I think you can get it done. I think that would be fine. Again, Ryan Clifford, I like, but again, he's expendable. Jet Williams, I don't see a position for him. I know people can talk about center field or second base, but again, if you're going to leave Mauricio or Acuna a part of this farm system, one of these guys is going to be up in the big leagues. Jet Williams has really nowhere to play anymore, especially when he's still got Drew Gilbert in the system that can play. That's going to be your center fielder of the future, we hope. So I go Jet Williams, Ryan Clifford, either Mauricio or Acuna. Doesn't matter which one to me. Either one, both of them one of them is expendable, in my opinion, because both of them are not going to be with this club if you're going to have a first baseman. And even if the Mets are willing to go for Vlad next year, you're not going to have no infield positions available. And you're going to have either Mauricio or Acuna at second base after this year or even this year. So they're expendable. That means you still keep Sproat. You still keep either Mauricio or Acuna. You still keep Gilbert. You still got Tidwell. You got multiple other guys. You still got Hamill. You still got Jonah Tong, most likely. Like, there's enough guys in your farm system that you feel confident about. You got Carson Benj as well, who's in your top 10 as well. So you got enough guys in your top 10. So my package would be Jet Williams, Ryan Clifford. I would throw Mauricio in there, and I would throw another top 15 to 20 prospect. Pick one. And there's your 4 guys, and I think that would be more than enough. And that's more than what the Yankees gave up for Juan Soto for a year of service, in my opinion. Because Michael King was traded as a reliever, and they turned him into a starter. Turned out very good. But other than that, nothing was very, Durbin. Was it Durbin? No, it was somebody else. I forgot. It was another prospect, but they were in the top 10. But it was only one top 10 prospect, really, and others that weren't really that much. Brito, okay, but nothing special, right? It was the quantity. Other than Michael King, it was basically quantity. It was 5 guys, but it was Michael King and a bunch of 4 other guys. That's basically what it was. It wasn't a great package. Padres were looking for pitching. Michael King was, at the end of the year with the Yankees, was a starter. I think he had like 4 or 5 starts, pitched well, and then the Padres obviously put him in a rotation and pitched pretty well. Other than that, it was King and a bunch of guys. So it was 5 guys, but it wasn't a great package. That package that I just gave you from the Mets for Vladdy is much better, prospect number wise, overall value, and what they are considered as top prospects. I think that is better. So that's what I think would get it done if it comes to that at that point. So all right, guys. So we talked about the Mets and Alonso still engaged in talks. We'll see what happens with Toronto signing Anthony Santander. Are they still going after Pete Alonso? You would think they would, but how much are they willing to go above and beyond the Mets offer? Currently, Toronto doesn't have an offer on the table for Pete Alonso. The Mets have their only offer for Pete Alonso, and that's all he has at the moment. Kirby Yates, I think, is the best target for the Mets, the best arm they could get in the bullpen, and I think there are interest in him, and I think they're going to get him. Jurickson Profar Mets have interest in Profar. I think that's a real possibility. Trading for Vlad, we shall see. Bregman, I think, is an option if the Mets don't get Pete Alonso. That is definitely an option. So once again, guys, a lot to talk about. I wish Chris was here so we can really get into a lot of the topics, a lot of the questions, a lot of the super chats. I do appreciate everybody giving a super chat. Duran, BWL, you guys, thank you very much. And again, we're going to keep on doing this again. From now on, we're going to do super chats for both of our channels just so we can get at least to as many comments as possible, because we lose out on so many good comments and that we just miss out on because there's so many people talking. Like right now, we got 517 people between YouTube and Twitter. It's kind of hard to keep track of all these goddamn comments, and I love it. It's just that I'd love to get to everybody, but it's hard to. Fireblaze, I mean, technically it's a hard deadline, but then again, a report came out that they're still engaged, that offer is still on the table. They pivoted because they had to, but that doesn't mean that offer's off the table. We have to wait and see. Again, Toronto might be going after Pete Alonso. Mets have the only offer for Pete Alonso right now. Nothing else is available, is up offering for Pete Alonso right now. So we'll see. All right, guys. So episode 28 is finally over. Mets Hot Stove, another one in the books. I appreciate everybody for tuning in to another Mets Hot Stove show. I wish Chris was here, but he got stuck in that Maryland/DC traffic. Obviously, a lot going on in that area with, the inauguration, the transfer of power, presidency, and Trump getting inaugurated today, and JD Vance and all that. So a lot's going on in that area. So once again, guys, next Mets Hot Stove would probably be probably Wednesday. And hopefully me and Chris will be there doing the show, and we get to have both of us here talking about our New York Mets. So make sure you follow the New York Mets Hot Stove official X account. Follow Chris, CPNY Sports, and follow me, TMWRNYM on X. And make sure, guys, you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We will see you next time on the Mets Hot Stove show. Everybody have a great night. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll see you probably next Hot Stove on Wednesday. Any breaking news, I'll have you covered with, hopefully, if I'm not at work or not sleeping, do a live breaking news if the Mets sign somebody. With that said, guys, everybody have a good night. Let's go Mets, and I'll see you next time on the Mets Hot Stove show. Have a great night, guys, and I'll see you next time.
The dead of night, full of echo. Concrete jungle, dreams bust to grow. Mets in the air, chase glory, no fear. Broken backs, but hearts steer clear. OMG, the chaos, what a scene. Streets buzzing like a machine. Critters from the shadows, chills on my spine. Past haunts, the future shine. Come back.